Well, good morning and welcome once again to Elevenses. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training. This is my twice weekly webcast where I give you some updates on the latest motorcycle news, tips and views. Now, if I sound a bit croaky this morning, that's because I am. Unfortunately, we've both managed to go down with COVID here in London. So today's show will be a fairly short one as I'm feeling a little bit rough this morning. So what have I got for you in the news? Well, the pound's slump has meant that fuel prices will continue to stay high. Trading standards have removed around 350 pieces of bike kit from sale at a Suffolk motorcycle show. The owner of Hull City Football Club has actually broken his arm in a motorcycle crash out in Turkey. Oxford's controversial traffic filters won't stop powered two-wheelers. That's a bit of good news. And so is the fact that the government has actually said they will refuse to enforce any councils who want to put in 15-mile-per-hour speed limits. And on the alternative fuels front, Kawasaki and Toyota have linked up for a new engine which burns hydrogen for motorcycles. So we'll have a quick look at that as well. And then finally, today's discussion point, I'll be having a look at the what's on the cards for the forthcoming motorcycle show season as we move into autumn. That's when new motorcycles are announced, and I'll tell you what I've found so far. So don't forget, if you've got any comments, any questions, do drop me a line. I will try to get back to you during the show. I'll try and answer anything else after the show if I can't manage it during the show. Feedback, obviously, always useful. And if you'd like me to cover something which I haven't talked about, drop me a line. I'm more than happy to do that. And Kevin's looked in. Morning, Kevin. Good to see you. Right. So what have we got for you today? Well, let's start with the mini budget. The reaction to Kwarteng's tax-cutting mini budget, or financial adjustment, or whatever you like to call it, was pretty instantaneous, with the UK government borrowing costs growing dramatically to pay for all the tax cuts. The pound slumped dramatically. It went down 3% to a 37-year low against the dollar. And that means, unfortunately, that despite the fact that the cost of oil has dropped back to where it was before Russia invaded Ukraine, we will continue to see high prices at the pump. Now, the AA calculated on Friday, I think it was, that if the pound had remained at the level it was mid-February, prices would be at least 11p a litre cheaper than they are now. The AA's fuel spokesperson, one Luke Bostet, he said, "The influence of the exchange rate is often overlooked when drivers compare oil price movements with those at the pump. At the moment, it's critical. Oil and fuel on commodity markets are traded in dollars, which makes the weaker pound very bad news for motorists and motorcyclists, of course. The price of oil is back to the level at the start of the Ukraine war, but petrol is more expensive, and 2/3 of that higher cost is down to the weakness of the pound." Now, the pound actually lost further ground against the dollar after the AA made its analysis on Friday evening, and it fell below $1.09 for the first time since 1985. So as you can see, the pound is particularly weak at the moment. Now, interestingly, I had just been looking a day or so earlier at the variation between the pound and the yen. What I'd found was they were actually fairly stable. Whilst the pound had weakened against the dollar, so had the yen, and basically they had maintained parity, pound and yen. But thanks to the mini budget, the pound also lost 2.5% against that Japanese currency. So unless there is a bounce back, expect 2023 model prices to show a significant hike. We've got a couple of other people looked in. Kevin has looked in, and Maxwell Paul says great potential in hydrogen engine. Yeah, okay, we'll certainly be looking at that in a moment. Now, with incomes under the hammer, there's always the temptation to look for cut price bike kit. Now, it is important, though, to be on the alert for substandard and non-compliant riding apparel. Now, earlier this year, I mentioned several times that trading standards officers had been out to bike shows, and they had warned various traders to remove items that were either missing CE certification altogether or to relabel them as not for biking use. Now, in a few instances, items were actually seized, and one or at least one stand was actually shut down by trading standards. Now, the latest show that got a visit from trading standards was the Copdoc bike show, which was held on Sunday, the 4th of September. That was up in Suffolk. And more than 350 items of motorcycle protective clothing were removed from sale. And this is the fairly staggering thing, is since the trading standards have been making known what they are expecting from traders, no less than 6 retailers out of the 15 stalls selling clothing were found to be selling PPE, personal protective equipment, that did not comply with the necessary safety legislation. Now, these sellers were subsequently issued with withdrawal notices, meaning they cannot legally sell those products until PPE regulations are met. Now, a total of 323 pairs of jeans with knee protectors, 15 full leather suits, 10 pairs of gloves with knuckle protectors were all stopped from being sold because of a failure to supply either the instruction booklets or the correct labeling. And in addition, 6 jackets were found to be missing the necessary impact protectors. And you'll recall from the previous show that, in fact, Australia dealers appear to have been removing impact protection, which is a necessary part of the CE standard, and selling it as an add-on when it should actually be in the jacket already. Now, one of the inspecting officers from Suffolk Trading Standards, a Becca Gray, she commented, Suffolk Trading Standards issued guidance to stall holders excuse me, in the weeks before the show to help make them aware of their responsibilities when selling PPE. Many were grateful for this advice and are working stopping non-compliant products from being on the market. Visitors to the show also welcomed our presence, commenting that it was the first time they'd ever received information on what to look out for when buying motorcycle clothing to ensure it could offer adequate protection. Well, I'm not sure it's the first time they've ever received that information. I've been talking about PPE and CE approval for a decade plus. But trading standards ask you, if you are concerned about any piece of motorcycle PPE, first of all, to stop using it, and secondly, report the retailer to trading standards via the Citizens Advice Consumer Service. So that's where you go if you have a problem with your PPE. Kevin has also looked in, second Kevin, and James is here as well. Good morning to you both. Now, if you do want to purchase a motorcycle lifestyle, here's some good news. You can apparently get the Ducati lifestyle on the cheap at the moment because, believe it or not, it was on clearance last week. I'm fascinated to know what a Ducati lifestyle actually is. Back in my day when Ducatis were desirable motorcycles, and it mostly meant tackling them with spanners to keep them running. I think they're a little bit more reliable now, but out of my price range, sadly, these days. Okay, so carrying on with the news, the owner of Hull City Football Club, one Aiken Ilikali, he broke an arm when he was involved in a motorcycle crash on Monday when he was actually riding his bike in Istanbul. And his daughter Banu suffered minor abrasions. It's reported the collision was with a vehicle coming from the opposite direction. So it sounds like a variation on the Smidsy to me. So everywhere you go, people have much the same accidents on motorcycles. Now, don't forget, if you want to catch up with these shows, do set a reminder. They go out 11 on Wednesdays and Sundays, nearly always live, very occasionally a recorded show, and very, very, very rarely I will miss one for one reason or another. But generally speaking, I do try to get these shows out live. So do look in. One bit of good news for motorcyclists. Oxfordshire County Council have confirmed that motorcyclists are to be exempted from 6 trial traffic filters on key routes across Oxford. Now, At the moment, the proposals are still under discussion, but if approved, they will be introduced under an experimental traffic regulation order from the summer of next year. And these traffic filters are part of Oxfordshire County Council's plans for a 6-month trial to reduce traffic levels across the notoriously congested city. I actually use Oxford myself regularly for urban rider training because, frankly, it's almost as busy as London. Now, by reducing what they call unnecessary journeys made by private vehicles, I wonder if the drivers of those vehicles consider them unnecessary. Probably not. The aim is to encourage the use of active travel and public transport, improving bus services and journey times, and reducing walking and cycling accidents, whilst at the same time improving air quality across the city. Now, MAG have claimed that the exemption is a direct consequence of work by the organisation to convince Oxfordshire County Council that motorcycles need separate consideration from other motorised vehicles. But as far as I understood the trial, from what I've been reading, it was always proposed that the ban would only affect private car owners, and they are the ones who will not be allowed through the barriers unless they have a permit. And there are a number of reasons you can get a permit to access the city centre. So although it is a win for two-wheelers, buses, coaches and taxis will also be allowed to continue to negotiate these barriers into the city. Vans making local deliveries, they will also be allowed to travel through these points, these filter points. But I'm not quite sure why HGVs need to be allowed to pass through these same city centre gateways. I would have thought that if you want to divert any vehicles away from a city centre, it would be HGVs doing deliveries. Anyway, the problem is that Oxford is cut pretty much in half by the River Thames, of course, and these gateways actually slice the city in two by making it difficult to move from one side of the river to the other. So there are a lot of critics about who aren't very keen on this at all, including my buddy Keith, who just happens to live in Oxford. It's also worth pointing out, of course, that having sliced the city in two, the route from one side to the other will involve quite a long detour on the ring road. Now, the ring road is also notoriously congested at peak, particularly at peak times. So, frankly, if more cars are forced onto these roads to get from A to B, I will be interested to see the effect on the ring road. Now, there is a consultation underway at the moment, so if you feel that you would be affected by the Oxford scheme, have a look. It closes on October the 3rd. Do a search on the Oxford traffic filters. You'll find it very quickly on Google. Now, one other bit of good news is that the government has actually banned councils from enforcing 15-mile-per-hour speed limits on their roads. Now, that obviously is a disappointment to road safety campaigners, but it's probably a relief to many of us. Last year, the City of London Corporation announced that it would be the first local authority to introduce the lower speed limit across the square mile of the City of London in a bid to make those streets safer. And other councils in built-up areas around the country were expected to follow suit if the change was successful. But it appears that the Department for Transport, DfT, has refused to grant permission to the corporation to enforce the planned lower limit. And this is why DfT officials said they were concerned about the accuracy of speedometers at such low speeds and the fact that not all speedos are actually marked in 5-mile-per-hour graduations. And they said this would make it hard for some drivers to comply with the limits and make it problematic to enforce the lower maximum. Now, that's quite interesting, actually, because frankly, there are speedos that I have used where it's almost difficult to keep the speed down to 20 miles per hour. It's easy enough with a digital speedo, but some of the older analog ones, particularly when the speedo goes up to sort of 180 miles an hour or something daft like that, the zone between sort of 15 miles an hour and 25 miles an hour is tiny. You've only got to wobble the throttle slightly, and the powerful bike will shoot past the 20 limit. And as motorcycles very rarely have cruise control, I'm actually concerned that some riders are picking up speeding tickets when they really didn't mean to. Anyway, as a backup plan, the council will be installing advisory signs on its streets telling motorists that the maximum speed is 15 miles per hour, but they will not be legally enforceable. And the other interesting thing, of course, is that they will have to be a different design to the red circle with the number in it, because that is a legal speed limit sign, and they will have to change it to something else. So the plan was due to be in place by the end of the year, and the first advisory signs have actually already been installed. And it's all part of the City of London's corporation's Vision Zero policy of eradicating deaths and serious injuries on its street by 2014. Kevin says, ludicrous mini budget with far-reaching consequences. Yes, I don't particularly want to get involved in an argument about who wins and loses on the budget, but clearly the fuel prices, which do interest us, are not going to go down anytime soon. Right, while the focus here on the UK remains on zero tailpipe emissions, which effectively rules out, if you think about it, the internal combustion engine with a tailpipe in principle, Japanese companies are continuing to look at hydrogen as a potential fuel. Now, Toyota, Yamaha, Mazda, Kawasaki and Subaru, they appeared at a joint press conference, I think it was late last year, to express their interest in what they called expanding fuel options. Now, Yamaha is developing a hydrogen-fueled 5-litre V8 engine for Toyota. I believe I've talked about that in the past. But the latest news is that Toyota and Kawasaki are now working on a hydrogen engine for motorcycle use, and they hope that this will be suitable for use not only in Japan but also outside the country. So to show off the technology, Toyota Motor Corp's president Akio Toyoda and Kawasaki Heavy Industries president Yasuhiko Hashimoto, they both turned up at Motegi Circuit, and what they did was they drove an off-road vehicle, an ATV sort of thing, which actually had a modified motorcycle engine fitted to it. So let me just get the picture up for you. There it is. So, oops, that's just Gordon Bennett. That's a Honda engine. There's nothing to do with this, right? Let's just try and zoom in on that a little bit so you can see what it looks like. Okay, now the hydrogen engine installed in this buggy thing is actually a modified version of the H2 Ninja Kawasaki engine. And to equip it to burn hydrogen, it's hydrogen. Kawasaki have been working with Toyota, obviously. Also, Denso, who provide electronics for motor companies, and various other companies as well. Now, some of the components are said to be the same as those used in the hydrogen-powered Toyota Corolla, which has also been under development. Now, I read the press release about 6 times, and I still couldn't quite get my head around what they were saying here. But I believe that the Mazda Corolla-based engine, the race car actually completed a 5-hour endurance race held at the Motegi circuit earlier this month, and that's little more than a year after it first appeared on track. And Toyota are now claiming that with the hydrogen power, they're actually getting a better performance engine than gasoline powered vehicles racing in the same class. Now, of course, since hydrogen engine burns hydrogen, the main product of the combustion process is water. But unfortunately, that's not the only product. There is a small amount of CO2 which comes from burning engine oil. But the tricky bit is that if you burn something in air, because it's got nitrogen in, the engines still produce oxides of nitrogen, so-called NOx pollutants. And that is the outcome of any combustion. Even your log fire will actually produce NOx pollutants. So whilst the big plus of a hydrogen burning engine is structurally it's very similar to a petrol powered car, so manufacturers can actually rapidly develop existing technology and use parts that are in common with the ICE engines using gasoline that will speed up development and it will cut costs. So that's the plus. Now, one problem that they still have with hydrogen is range. Now, Toyota are apparently looking at using hydrogen in liquid form rather than as a compressed gas. And that allows you to put a lot more hydrogen into the vehicle, which basically means it can go further on a tank full of hydrogen. And they have actually carried out test drives of a vehicle equipped with a system that is capable of utilizing liquid hydrogen rather than gaseous compressed gas. But frankly, there is still a long way to go before hydrogen engine vehicles can be rolled out, and not least, of course, there'll be the need to develop hydrogen refueling stations. So the technology is far from mature yet. Now, don't forget, if you have any comments, questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. If you enjoy the show, please do pop over to my coffee page, and if you buy me a coffee over there, you get access to hundreds of better biking articles over there. A couple more have gone up this week, and when I feel a bit better, I will be putting some more up from the archives. At the moment, 2014 to 2020 are all up. 2021 I'm putting up at the moment. 2022, everything I've written this year is already up on the coffee page, and you can access quite a lot over there for free. And if you do support me, you access a lot more that is currently behind that paywall. Horrible word, isn't it? Paywall. It makes me sound like I'm gouging you for cash there. Right, Kevin has just said he got a notice of intended prosecution for 22 in a 20. That is just outrageous. Sorry, but that's just nonsensical. I don't know how on earth you can expect the speedo to be that accurate. They're not designed to be that accurate, as far as I know. And if you've got an old wobbly analog speedo, trying to keep it down like that is just nonsensical. Something needs to be done, I suppose. Right, okay, so on to today's discussion point. As I said, a fairly short show today because I'm not feeling in top form. I do actually have some honey and lemon here to sip. I think it's fair to say about motorcycling that we are stuck in a kind of limbo at the moment because we are caught in that petrol-powered internal combustion engine past, but we're also looking towards the future that will move very rapidly away from petrol. Now, whether we end up with electric, hydrogen burning, fuel cells, or even hybrids, what's clear is there's not much point in motorcycle manufacturers going ahead with major development of new petrol engined motorcycles at the moment. There will be undoubtedly smaller machines which are aimed at the developing markets for some considerable time yet, but even places like India and Indonesia are switching to electric power, and there are schemes to bring electric power to in African countries too. So the market for petrol is drying up. And that's already playing out in the news of what we're likely to see during the autumn round of bike shows. Now, I've not done an exhaustive study, but for the last couple of weeks, I have been keeping my eye on new model announcements. Now, whilst there is a bit of excitement about the new Honda engines, that is the 755 Twin, which I talked about a little bit more detail last week, which will power a new Transalp and a new Hornet and probably a CBR sports bike and sort of a retro Hawk. That's what is believed that motor will appear in. And Suzuki are also working on a twin cylinder, which will likely be seen in a replacement for the V-Strom and then the SV 650 in the next few months. there is actually a bit of a dearth of new models anywhere. So here's a list of what I can tell you is arriving. Now, right now, there is no word of anything new from Yamaha at all. Kawasaki's 2023 ZX-10R and the ZX-10RR sports bikes, they get new colours, but otherwise few changes. The 2023 Z650 and Ninja 650 also get new colours, but they do get an overdue update, I think, to LED lighting, full LED lighting, and they do get traction control. I'm a little bit surprised they haven't got that already. Now, Suzuki are changing the colour of their 2023 SV650 and SV650X. I thought that bike was disappearing at the end of this year, so apparently not. And their Hayabusa is also getting a new colour scheme. And if you look at Honda's model, they're doing the same with their 2023 NT 1100, the NC 750X, the XADV scooter, and the Forza 750. Now, over in Italy, Moto Guzzi are releasing an updated version of the V100 Mandello, and that'll be called the Aviazione Navale, which I presume stands for Naval Aviation. And they will also get a special edition of their V7 Stone. And as far as I can see, what that delivers is an Arrow exhaust, which actually ups the power and torque a tad, cafe racer style mirrors, I'm told, red shock absorbers, well, that makes a huge difference, and a shiny black colour scheme to replace the sort of matte finish found on the ordinary stones. And for the benefit of that, you actually will be forking out around 2,000 extra euro. So it doesn't seem like a bargain to me. Moto Morini, another Italian manufacturer that has their bikes built in China, is actually giving their X-Cape 650 a gold wheel edition, and that will be celebrating the company's 85th anniversary. But they'll also be launching two new naked bikes based on the X-Cape platform. One's a roadster, the other's a sort of street scrambler with wire wheels. It gets an 18-inch wire wheel at the front, a high-level front mudguard, higher, wider bars, semi-knobbly tyres, and a tiny fly screen. So that will be perfect for hacking around city streets. Meanwhile, Benelli's big news is that they will be releasing a new TNT 899, which is effectively a revival of a bike they first built 15 years ago. Ducati, so far they've revealed a new SP Monster variant. KTM, the Austrian manufacturer, they are upgrading their KTM 890 with technical and electronic upgrades. And the European designed Chinese-built MASH motors, they've given their X-Ride 650 Dirt Tracker larger wheels to make it into an old-style trail bike. Now, I've probably missed quite a few. I'm sure you'll find more if you go hunting. But I think you get the idea. Generally speaking, the only manufacturers which are actually developing new motorcycles at the moment are the internal combustion engine bikes coming from the Chinese. So, quite frankly, who would have thought that a decade ago? And finally, just to round off today's show, don't forget the upcoming live events. Unfortunately, I had to cancel the live appearance at Rye because my partner tested positive for COVID on Friday morning, and very much suspect I've gone down with it too, judging by the sore throat and the headache. But hopefully I will be fit for the upcoming live online talk event. October's is Science Being Seen. It's one of my in-depth shows, and I'll be looking at the difference between visibility and conspicuity, a very, very important concept indeed, and camouflage, and trying to explain how it is that motorcycles in plain sight can sometimes go missing due to colours. So that's October the 5th, Wednesday, 8 p.m. in the evening. Tickets are £5. The link is up above in the preamble to the show. November's live event, I'll be looking at sports psychology and how we can use that to actually learn better riding techniques during the winter without even going anywhere near our bikes. It's very, very powerful technique, and so have a look at that. Right, so now Kevin says, I hope we recover. I'm sure we will, Kevin. Maxwell says, the 22 mile per hour ticket is defensible in court. Well, I'd hope so. On the other hand, I've heard stories of magistrates. Um, Revisions to the highway code. Well, I have covered that in past shows actually. So that is, if you go and look at the old shows, you'll find me talking about those at some length. I went through all the changes. Terry Leach says the Royal Enfield 350 Hunter has his interest. It does look quite an interesting little bike. I forgot to mention that. Kevin said, and the Triumph. I didn't see any updates for Triumph actually. And Maxwell says, respect for persevering with the show. Thank you very much indeed. Yeah. Well, I'm going to retire to bed, I think, before I do very much else, and probably finish my lemon and honey drink. So thank you all for looking in. Sorry it's a bit of a short one this morning, but we'll be back on Wednesday. Hopefully we're fit and well, live and kicking, and with a back to sort of normal length show. So if you are out there on your bike today, and it is actually a lovely day in London, I wish I wasn't self-isolating, but was actually out there riding the bike, do stay shiny side up.